My ex, Jess, and I broke up a year ago after dating for 2 years. Recently, my younger brother, Matt, started dating her, and I feel hurt and blindsided. I don't even know where to start with this one, but here goes. I'm in this incredibly awkward situation that I never thought I'd have to deal with, and I genuinely have no idea how to handle it. So, I'm hoping some of you can give me a bit of perspective because right now I feel like I'm going out of my mind. About a year ago, my ex, Jess, and I broke up after dating for a little over 2 years. It wasn't a bad breakup, but it wasn't particularly friendly either. We had drifted apart, and after trying to make it work for a while, we both agreed it was better to go our separate ways. I won't lie, there was some hurt, and it took me a few months to get back on my feet emotionally. But I did, or at least I thought I did. My younger brother, Matt, and I have always been close. Growing up, he was my best friend. When Jess and I were dating, he got to know her pretty well since we spent a lot of time together. They would talk and joke around, but I never thought much of it. Matt's always been a friendly guy, and I liked that he got along with the person I was dating. Fast forward to last month. I'm scrolling through my phone, and I see a post from Matt's Instagram. He's tagged Jess in it, and they're at a local concert, looking pretty cozy. I try to tell myself it's nothing, but something doesn't feel right. A few days later, Matt calls me up, sounding nervous and awkward, and drops the bombshell. He and Jess have been dating for a few weeks. When he told me, I just sat there stunned. I didn't even know what to say. It was like my brain couldn't quite catch up to what he was saying. I managed to mumble something like, "Wow, I didn't see that coming," and then I told him I needed to go. After we hung up, I sat in my room for what felt like hours, just replaying the conversation over and over again in my head. I couldn't help but feel this wave of betrayal. I mean, Matt knew how hard the breakup had been for me. I had poured my heart out to him during those first few months when everything felt so raw. And now he's dating her? I get that it's been a while since Jess and I split, and I'm not going to pretend that I still have feelings for her. But she was a huge part of my life, and it just feels weird to think of her and Matt together. The next time I saw Matt, he tried to explain. He kept saying things like, "It just sort of happened, and we didn't plan it," which honestly didn't make me feel any better. Jess reached out to him a while back, apparently just to check in on how I was doing. They got to talking, and one thing led to another. It was all very casual, according to Matt, until suddenly it wasn't. I tried to keep my cool during the conversation, but inside, I was fuming. I mean, how does that just happen? Why would Jess even reach out to Matt in the first place? And why didn't Matt think to mention any of this sooner, like when they first started hanging out? It felt like a betrayal from both sides, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they'd kept this secret, knowing it would hurt me. Then, to make things even more awkward, my parents found out. They didn't seem nearly as shocked as I'd expected. My mom even said she thought it was sweet that Matt had found someone, and my dad's only comment was that sometimes life works out in funny ways. They didn't seem to grasp how weird this all was for me, like they expected me to just be supportive because Matt is my brother and I should want him to be happy. A few nights later, my parents insisted on a family dinner so we could all talk things through. They thought it would be a good idea for me, Matt, and Jess to clear the air and get used to the new situation. I seriously considered backing out, but I figured that would just make me look like a jerk. So I went, dreading every second leading up to it. When I walked in, there they were, Matt and Jess sitting side by side, holding hands like they hadn't just completely thrown me for a loop. My mom was in full hostess mode, talking about how great it is that we can all be adults about this. But the whole dinner felt like some kind of twisted test, with everyone watching me to see how I'd react. I just kept my mouth shut and tried to act normal, even though my insides were a mess. At one point, Jess tried to pull me aside and give me this heartfelt speech about how she never meant for this to hurt me and how she still cares about me as a person. I could barely look at her. All I could think was that if she cared so much, why would she start dating my brother of all people? I nodded, said something vague about needing time, and walked away before I could say something I'd regret. After that dinner, things have been tense, to put it mildly. My parents keep urging me to be supportive and not to hold this against Matt. They keep talking about how love is unpredictable and how sometimes we find it in the most unexpected places. But all I can think is, why does my comfort have to be sacrificed for their happiness? Why am I expected to be the bigger person here? Matt has been texting me almost every day, trying to act like nothing's changed, but I've been keeping my distance. I'm just not ready to go back to the way things were. Part of me feels guilty for pushing him away. I know he's my brother, and I don't want to lose that bond. But every time I picture him and Jess together, it feels like a punch to the gut. And then there's Jess. She's tried reaching out too, but I've ignored her messages. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get to a place where I can be okay with this. It's not even that I think they did this to hurt me on purpose. I just feel blindsided. And it's hard to see them together without feeling like I'm being replaced in some way. Like my entire history with Jess means nothing now that she's moved on to my brother. I keep wondering if I'm being unreasonable, if I should just suck it up and put on a brave face for Matt's sake. After all, he didn't ask to fall for Jess, and I know he's not trying to hurt me. But every time my parents give me that disappointed look like I'm failing some test of maturity, I feel like screaming. Why do I have to be the one to swallow my feelings and make this easier for everyone else? The worst part is that I feel so isolated in all of this. My friends try to be supportive, but most of them don't get it. They say things like, well, you're over Jess, right? So what does it matter? Or they try to make jokes about how, at least she's still in the family. I know they're trying to lighten the mood, but it just makes me feel even more alone. I don't know how to get past this. I want to be happy for Matt. I really do. He deserves to find someone who makes him happy, and I know Jess is a good person, despite everything. But being happy for him means ignoring how much this hurts me, and right now, I'm just not sure I can do that. I keep wondering what the right move is. Should I try to sit down with both of them and talk it out? Should I keep my distance and focus on moving on? Or am I being selfish for feeling hurt in the first place? It feels like no matter what I do, I'm going to end up being the bad guy in someone's story, either to Matt and Jess or to myself. After that awkward dinner and the conversations that followed, I decided I needed some time away from all of them. Jess, Matt, and even my parents. They didn't seem to understand how I felt, and honestly, I needed a break from the constant pressure to be supportive. So, I took a few days off work, packed a bag, and drove up to a cabin my friend owns a few hours away. It was the kind of place with no cell reception, just peace and quiet, which I desperately needed. Being out there gave me some space to think. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over. Asterisk, am I overreacting? Shouldn't I just be happy that they found each other? Asterisk, but every time I tried to convince myself that I should be okay with it, my chest tightened. It's not that I wanted to control who Matt dates. Hell, if he'd met some new person, I would have been over the moon for him. But Jess was a different story. It wasn't just any ex, it was my ex, someone who had been deeply involved in my life and had shared so many personal memories with me. I thought back to all the things Jess and I had gone through together. Our late-night talks, that weekend trip to the beach where we got caught in the rain, and even those little inside jokes that only we understood. Those memories used to be special, but now they just felt tainted. It was like those moments had lost their meaning because she was building new ones with my brother. A couple of days later, I finally headed back home, still feeling raw but a little more grounded. When I got back, I had about a dozen missed calls and messages from Matt. He was worried, asking where I'd gone and if I was okay. Part of me felt guilty for making him worry, but another part felt a bitter satisfaction, like maybe he deserved to feel a little bit of the discomfort he'd caused me. When I finally called him back, Matt sounded relieved, but also frustrated. "Why'd you disappear like that, man?" he asked. "You didn't even tell anyone you were leaving." I sighed, feeling the tension return. "I needed some space, Matt. You have to understand, this whole thing with you and Jess, it's not easy for me. And it feels like everyone just expects me to be fine with it." There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear him take a deep breath. "I know it's weird, okay? I get that, but I don't want to lose you over this. You're my brother, and I care about you more than anything." His words hit me hard. Deep down, I knew he meant them, but that didn't make the situation any less painful. "I don't want to lose you either, but you have to see why this is difficult for me. I can't just flip a switch and be okay with everything." "Then what do you want me to do?" he asked, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. "Break up with her? Walk away from someone I really care about?" I hesitated. I didn't have a good answer for him. Asking him to end things with Jess felt wrong, even if that's what I secretly wanted. But pretending that everything was fine felt just as wrong. "I don't know, Matt. I need time, and I need you to respect that." He promised he'd try to give me space, but I could hear the hurt in his voice. I knew he didn't fully understand why I couldn't just accept things and move on, and part of me wondered if he ever would. After that call, things stayed strained between us. We went from talking almost every day to once or twice a week, and those conversations were stilted, awkward, like we were both stepping around some invisible minefield. My parents, bless their hearts, tried to play peacemakers, inviting us both over for dinners or family game nights, but I always found excuses to bail. Meanwhile, I kept running into Jess around town, which only made things worse. Our town isn't that big, so bumping into her at the grocery store or at the coffee shop was inevitable. She always tried to be polite, asking how I was doing and if I wanted to catch up, but I couldn't stomach the thought of sitting down with her. It was like she didn't fully grasp how much seeing her with my brother hurt me. So, I kept my answers short and found excuses to leave quickly. The thing that really broke me, though, was when I heard from a mutual friend that Jess and Matt were talking about moving in together. It was like a punch to the gut, a reminder that this wasn't some passing fling. It was real, and it wasn't going away anytime soon. I felt like I was being forced to watch my brother step into a role that I used to play, like I was being erased from that part of my own life. I tried to distract myself with work, with friends, with anything that would keep my mind off the situation, but it didn't help much. Every time I scrolled through social media, I'd see a photo of them together, looking happy, and it would tear open the wound all over again. I even considered unfollowing both of them, but that felt too dramatic, like it would make this rift between us permanent. One night, after a particularly rough day, I found myself sitting in my car outside Matt's place, trying to work up the courage to go in and talk to him face to face. I hadn't seen him in person since that awkward family dinner, and I knew we couldn't keep avoiding each other forever. But just as I was about to get out, I saw Jess come out the front door, laughing at something Matt said as he followed her out. They looked so comfortable together, like this was just the most natural thing in the world. And all I could feel was this overwhelming sense of loss. I drove away before they saw me, tears blurring my vision. I'd never felt so alone, and it wasn't just about losing Jess. It was about losing the bond I'd always had with Matt, the trust that we'd always had each other's backs. Now, there was this huge, painful divide between us, and I didn't know if we'd ever get back to where we used to be. A few days later, Matt called me again, asking if we could meet up. I knew I couldn't keep avoiding him forever, so I agreed. We met at a bar downtown, somewhere neutral where we wouldn't feel the weight of our family's expectations hanging over us. He looked nervous when he walked in, like he was bracing himself for another fight. We sat down, ordered a couple of beers, and sat in awkward silence for a few minutes before Matt finally spoke up. Look, I know this is hard for you. I'm not trying to pretend it isn't. But Jess and we're serious about each other. And I need to know if there's any chance you can accept that. I stared down at my drink, trying to find the right words. I'm trying, Matt. I really am, but I don't know how to just be okay with it. It's not like I want to stand in the way of your happiness, but I still feel like I'm losing something here. Matt looked down at the table, his expression pained. I don't want you to feel like you're losing me. I still want us to be brothers, to be close. But I can't just give up on something that makes me happy. And that was the crux of it, wasn't it? His happiness versus my discomfort. The past versus the future. I realized then that there wasn't going to be a simple answer, no magic words that would make everything go back to normal. We talked for a long time that night, longer than we had in months. I told him about how blindsided I felt, how it hurt to see them together, and how I missed the way things used to be. He told me about how Jess made him feel understood in a way he hadn't felt before, how he never wanted to hurt me, but couldn't ignore what was happening between them. By the end of it, we were both exhausted, but I think we understood each other a little better. I won't lie and say that everything's magically better now. It's still hard, and I'm still working through my feelings. There are days when I feel like I'm getting closer to acceptance, and days when I feel like I'm back at square one, raw and bitter. But Matt's been making more of an effort, giving me the space I need while still trying to stay connected. Jess, too, has backed off from trying to force a friendship with me, and I appreciate that. Maybe in time, things will get easier. I don't know if I'll ever fully be okay with this, but I do know that I don't want to lose my brother over it. And maybe that's enough for now.